The first version of the story is always the one told by the man himself. He is behind the wheel before sunrise, coffee cooling in the cup holder, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road. Someone cuts him off without warning. The body reacts before the mind can think. Heat rises in his chest. His hands grip the steering wheel harder. In his own mind, it feels justified. "Who does that?" he mutters, already building the case. By the time he reaches work, the insult has followed him inside like a shadow. One moment on the road, and the whole day bends around it. This is how control is lost in small pieces. At the office, it is not a car but a comment. A coworker speaks carelessly. A boss asks too sharply. A wife says, "You're on edge again." And suddenly he is no longer responding to the moment. He is responding to every wound he has been carrying for years. The old pressure returns. The old humiliation. The old need to prove something. And because no one can see the storm inside him, he believes he is still hiding it well. But other people see more than he thinks. To his son, he is the father who snaps too fast. To his wife, he is the man who turns a difficult conversation into a battlefield. To strangers, he is the driver with the clenched face and the restless hands. In one version of the story, he is the victim of a rude world. In another, he is the source of the tension that follows him everywhere. Both are true enough to matter. And this is where many men begin to lose something deeper than patience. They lose authority over themselves. A man who cannot pause becomes easy to steer. By anger, by fear, by pride, by every passing inconvenience. He starts confusing reaction with strength, when in truth reaction is often the first sign of surrender. Real strength is quieter. It knows how to breathe before it explodes. It knows how to stay silent when silence protects what matters. It knows how to step back, observe, and choose. If that sounds familiar, stay with this. Because the difference between being ruled by emotion and mastering it is smaller than most men think, but it changes everything. And once you see how the same moment can look different from the inside, from the outside, and in the long aftermath, you may never look at your own reactions the same way again. He told himself it was nothing, just traffic, just a stupid comment from a coworker, just one more small frustration in a day already wearing him thin. But that is how it begins for so many men. Not with a catastrophe, but with a crack. A tiny moment of irritation that finds the weakest place in the armor and slowly starts to spread. From the inside, it feels justified. The chest tightens, the jaw locks, the mind races ahead, building arguments before the other person even finishes speaking. A man thinks he is defending himself, protecting his dignity, proving that he will not be disrespected. But what he often cannot see in that heated instant is how quickly he hands over control. The emotion speaks first, and reason is left chasing behind it, too late to matter. At the office, he raises his voice in a meeting over a careless remark. On the road, he leans on the horn, convinced the other driver deserves it. At home, he answers a simple question with a sharp edge, and the silence that follows is heavier than the original offense. To him, each reaction feels small in the moment. To everyone else, it reveals something larger. They begin to see a man who is easy to provoke, difficult to trust, and even harder to lean on when life turns serious. That is the strange cruelty of reactivity. It does not only damage the moment. It changes the atmosphere around a man. A wife stops bringing him certain concerns because she does not want another explosion. Children learn to watch his face before speaking. Friends laugh less freely. Coworkers begin to walk carefully, measuring every word. And though he may still believe he is being strong, the truth is more uncomfortable. He is becoming predictable to his emotions and unreliable to the people who depend on him. This is why the ancient wisdom matters so much now. Between the event and the reaction, there must be space. A breath, a pause, a deliberate delay that interrupts the old pattern. Not weakness, not surrender, precision. The man who can remain silent for one extra second, who can step back before speaking, who can observe the surge without obeying it, begins to recover his authority. And once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it. The real question is no longer, why did that upset me? The deeper question is, What kind of man do I become when I am upset? The real turning point does not always happen in a dramatic breakdown. Sometimes it begins in the smallest moments, the ones no one applauds and no one records. A man is driving home after a long day, and one careless driver cuts him off. His jaw tightens. His chest rises. The old fire wakes up before he can name it. For a second, he is no longer in control of the road, the moment, or himself. He is inside the storm. And that is the hidden tragedy. Most men do not lose their peace in one great disaster. They lose it in fragments. A sharp reply to a spouse. A cold silence after a coworker's comment. A defensive message sent too quickly. A tone that was meant to protect pride but ended up damaging trust. To the man in that moment it feels justified, feels strong. But to everyone else it often looks like instability dressed up as strength. This is where the old wisdom becomes painfully practical. The Stoics understood that freedom begins where reaction ends. Jung understood that the part of us we refuse to face does not disappear. It comes out sideways in moods, projections, and overreactions. The angry man is not always angry because the world is cruel. Sometimes he is angry because he has no inner distance from what he feels. He becomes the emotion instead of observing it. That distance can be learned. It starts with something so simple it almost feels insulting. Breathe, and do not speak yet. Not because you are weak, because you are strong enough to wait. The man who can hold his tongue for 5 seconds has already separated himself from the first wave. Those 5 seconds create a small room between stimulus and response, and in that room, dignity can return. Imagine how different a marriage sounds when a husband hears criticism and does not immediately defend himself. Imagine how different a workplace feels when a man is challenged and does not rush to prove his worth. Imagine a father who is irritated, but instead of passing that irritation into the house, he steps back, takes a breath, and chooses silence before speaking. That is not passivity. That is command. Still, the deeper battle is not only about behavior. It is about identity. Who is the man when nobody is clapping, when his ego is bruised, when life does not go his way? If he cannot answer that question, then every inconvenience becomes a threat. Every disagreement becomes disrespect. Every delay becomes an insult. But if he can stay present, if he can watch the emotion without obeying it, he begins to reclaim himself. And once a man sees this clearly, he can no longer pretend not to know. The next moment of pressure will come, as it always does. The only question is whether he will remain a prisoner of the impulse, or whether he will use that moment to practice the kind of control that quietly changes everything. The turning point rarely announces itself. It usually arrives in the middle of an ordinary day, inside a small moment that most people would call harmless. A driver cuts him off. A colleague questions his work. A loved one says the wrong thing at the wrong time. And in that instant, the old pattern rises up like fire under dry wood. His chest tightens. His jaw locks. His mind begins writing a story in seconds. Disrespect, betrayal, humiliation. He feels the need to answer now, to correct now, to win now. But that urgency is exactly where his power begins to disappear. From the outside, it looks simple. A man becomes irritated. Another person reacts. Words are exchanged. But inside, the battle is far more serious. In one version of the story, he sees himself as a man defending his dignity. In another, he appears impatient, volatile, impossible to trust. And in the deepest version, the one he rarely wants to face, he is not defending anything at all. He is being pulled by an untrained mind, one that mistakes impulse for strength and noise for authority. This is why the tactical delay is so powerful. Not because it makes a man passive, but because it gives him back ownership of himself. He breathes once, slowly. He says nothing. He steps back, even if only mentally. He watches the emotion without becoming it. That pause may last 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds can save a relationship, a reputation, a conversation, a decision. A wise man does not ask, "How fast can I react?" He asks, "What happens to me if I do?" And what happens is easy to ignore at first. The body carries the tension home. The family feels the mood before a single word is spoken. The wife, the children, the partner, the friend, they all sense the storm before the man himself admits it. The room changes. The atmosphere hardens. Then, later, he wonders why people keep their distance, why respect has thinned, why peace never stays long in his life. Stoic discipline teaches that freedom is not found in controlling every event, but in controlling the response. Jung would say that what is unexamined will drive us from below. Both point to the same truth. If a man does not learn to observe himself, his emotions will do the driving. And when they drive, they do not care about wisdom, timing, or consequence. This is where real masculinity begins to separate itself from performance. Not in dominance, but in steadiness. Not in loudness, but in command. If this is hitting close to home, stay with me, because the next part shows what happens when a man finally stops arguing with every feeling and starts training the one thing that can change everything. He stood there in the middle of the moment, feeling the heat rise in his chest like a private alarm only he could hear. Someone had cut him off in traffic. A coworker had spoken to him with that sharp, careless tone. A small inconvenience, a misplaced word, a delay that should have meant nothing, and yet his whole body acted as if it had been attacked. In the common world, this is how a man begins to lose himself. Not in one great disaster, but in 100 tiny reactions that steal his peace, his dignity, and eventually his authority. From the outside, it looked different. The same man, jaw tight, shoulders lifted, voice too fast, appeared restless, defensive, even tired. His wife noticed the silence after the anger. His children noticed the tension before he spoke. His colleagues noticed the way he made everything heavier than it needed to be. No one needed to say it out loud. They could feel it. A man who cannot govern his inner weather creates storms in every room he enters. And yet, in his own mind, he always had a reason. They disrespected me. They crossed the line. Anyone would react. That is the trap. Emotion always offers a story that makes reaction feel righteous. But wisdom asks a harder question. What did that reaction cost? A missed opportunity? A damaged relationship? Another night spent replaying the argument, feeling ashamed, promising to do better, and then failing again the next time pressure appeared? This is where real strength begins, not with force, but with delay. A breath, a silence, a step back. That small space is not weakness. It is power. It is the place where a man stops being a slave to the first impulse and becomes the observer of it. In that pause, he can ask, what is happening in me right now? Not, how do I strike back? But, what is the right response? He learns to watch himself the way a wise stranger would. The anger is there, yes. The fear is there, too. The urge to prove, to defend, to dominate is there. But it passes through him instead of owning him. That is the beginning of mastery. Not the absence of emotion, but the discipline to hold it without being ruled by it. And when a man starts living this way, people notice. They feel safer around him. He becomes less explosive, more grounded, harder to provoke, and easier to trust. If you have ever watched someone you respect stay calm when everyone else loses control, you know the kind of authority that creates. It does not shout. It does not perform. It simply stands. So ask yourself honestly, how many times has a moment of reaction turned into an hour, a day, or a broken connection you did not intend to break? And if that pattern can be changed with one breath, one pause, one deliberate choice, what might your life look like if you practiced it consistently? The next step is where that quiet discipline becomes a way of living. In the final light of the day, when the city begins to soften and the noise of the world loses its sharp edge, the lesson becomes clear. A man does not become strong because nothing affects him. He becomes strong when life presses in, when criticism lands hard, when the road is blocked, when the voice on the other end of the phone rises, and yet he does not surrender his center. That is where real authority is born. Not in volume, not in impulse, in restraint. The first version of the story showed how it feels from the inside, where anger seems justified and every reaction feels immediate and necessary. The second showed how it looks to others, where the same man appears tired, unstable, and difficult to trust. The third revealed what it costs over time. the quiet erosion of respect, peace, intimacy, and self-respect. But now, from a higher place, all those versions merge into one truth. Emotional control is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the ability to pause long enough for wisdom to arrive. The next time pressure hits, there will be a choice. Breathe once. Stay silent for one more beat. Take a step back, even if only inwardly. Observe before acting. That small delay may look insignificant from the outside, but inside it creates a kingdom. In that space, a man is no longer owned by his first impulse. He becomes the witness, not the prisoner. And from that place, his words carry weight. His presence calms rooms instead of shaking them. A woman may notice it in the way he listens instead of exploding. A son may feel it in the way he is corrected without humiliation. A colleague may trust it when tension rises and everyone else starts breaking apart. This is the kind of strength the world is starving for. Quiet strength. Steady strength. The kind that does not need to announce itself. If this message spoke to you, give it a quiet like so it can reach another man who needs it. And if you know that your own life still needs more calm, more discipline, more command over emotion, stay with us. Subscribe because the path to mastery is not built in one moment. It is built in the next decision and the next one after that.